Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hello. As people continue to filter in, I'm going to get started with my little monologue here. Thank you again so much for joining us today for another ZingTrain webinar. This one is titled Using Systems to Get Better Results. I am Katie Alexander. For those who have not been to one of our webinars before, I am the community builder here at ZingTrain, and I will be your host today. And I'm very glad to be joined by Timo Anderson. He is one of the fabulous trainers here at ZingTrain. We also we also have Mara Ferguson. She's the keynote liaison. She's here behind the scenes and she will be in the chat, as well as myself once I go off camera, and she'll be monitoring any questions that you have or like technical difficulties that you might face. And before we get going, I do want to say that we do have closed captioning available. So if you would like to turn that on, Mara has just dropped the instructions into the chat to do that. And then it's also a button on the bottom of the screen, of your Zoom screen. We are all coming to you from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we always love to know where other people are tuning in from. So if you'd like to drop that in the chat at the bottom of the Zoom screen again, it would be great to hear. And then also, you might catch wind of some neighbors that are in the room too. Um, and then I have two more pieces of housekeeping. And while I tell them to you, I would like you to consider this question. And then drop your answer into the chat, any answers that you have. The question is, what gets in the way of systems being used in your organization? What gets in the way? Let us know. I'm sure we're going to see some repeats. Okay, so the last two pieces of information I have for you are the format of the webinar. Timo's going to be presenting here for a bit, and then we leave time at the end for Q&A. So we'll be collecting questions, Mara and I, throughout the webinar. So you can submit them into the Q&A section of the webinar of Zoom. That's the best place. And we will put them to the side, and then I'll come back on screen and Timo and I will chat about them. And then we'll try to get to as many as we can. If we are unable to, then we do send out a follow-up email that includes a recording of this conversation, which is the second thing to say before we get started. We are recording it, and we will send the recording and the slides by the end of tomorrow in the follow-up email, along with any resources that come up during our time together. And the webinar will also live on our website, zingtrain.com. We put all past webinars up there, so there's lots of free resources that you can check out on the World Wide Web. Okay, that's all from me. So I'll see you again at the end, and I'll turn it over to Timo to get us started.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I was tracking those notes because I know myself not to be able to put those pieces in place as we're going through, but I wanted to make sure that I was capturing some of those, and I appreciate you dropping them in. To me, the opportunity for systems is amazing, and I am not a systems person. Both Katie and Mara can tell you I'm probably the least system-oriented person at ZingTrain. I like to do things in my own way, in my own structure, in my own format, but I do know that systems get us better results. And this kind of goes through a number of different parts. So let's jump in and get started because the system is we want to get to content as quickly as possible. So in thinking about this, I want to be very clear that we are working on the idea of that by the end of this, how embracing system leads to more organizational success. And embracing systems is not just at a leadership level, but it's embracing them at all levels and saying systems can get us to things that are beneficial. What are some of the key elements of successful systems that make it easier for people to do the right thing? This is, again, a big key takeaway. And I will share that this webinar is really a small component, a kind of sales pitch to yourself of how you might share this with other staff to be able to think about, can we take the time and effort, I noticed that was on there, in order to put the time into creating the systems that get us better results. And then think about some systems and tools that we might have that don't have to be the long, arduous checklists that are just kind of annoying and frustrating, but they are tools that really get us. And I will share a couple of my absolute favorites here at Zingerman's that have made it through 11 and a half years that I've been here as an employee that I still think about, still look at, and still reference either mentally or visually when I'm in the situation. So, where do we start with this? We're thinking about this in a frame of saying, this business perspective chart. And if you've been in one of our components, if you've been to one of our trainings, you know that we teach this in almost every single situation. We teach it with our staff during orientation. We teach it in all of our classes because this is so key. The mission on the outside, the vision at the top that helps us get to results. But what I want to focus in here today, what I want to get kind of dig into is in that middle circle, right? We have our systems and our culture. And some people talked about, well, I've always done it that way. There's no way. We don't have time to create new stuff. It's always worked. So why don't we just do it that way? That is actually a system. We've bought in, we're doing this way because we've always done it. It gets taught one person to another, it gets handed down, oral tradition, whatever it might be. It's a system that is getting us results. And you'll see in the middle of that circle that systems is there. Systems help us in the outcome that we really want. If we follow them, it allows us to get to our bottom line results. Here at Zingerman's, we talk about great food, great service, and great finance. Culture is on the other side of that middle circle. And culture here is not big culture like American culture, European, like it's not those pieces or cultured butter when you have things. This is culture of what's going on when the boss isn't there. What's going on the third day after a training, the eighth day, the month after, when we've kind of lost that initial excitement. What is the reality of what happens? Culture is what's actually going on. Systems are what we want to go on. And if you take those two and you let them slowly drift apart, right? We have this system we created, we thought about it, we taught it, we thought it was cool, but we don't do a lot of follow-up, and then that culture just kind of pulls away. And I will say, sometimes we say, well, systems are good and culture is bad, but that's not always the case. Sometimes culture guides us to know we need to update or change the system to make it better. We're not getting the same level of results. It's not working in the same way. And so don't think of one as good or bad, but try to keep them as close as possible. And if we need to move towards the culture with the new system, let's update it. But let's get really clear. So in this process, we need to get very clear of what is a system. And so we want to think about it is, by our definition here at Zingerman's, agreed upon, documented process that delivers us consistent results. So think about this. Is it agreed upon? That doesn't mean one person does it, right? That doesn't mean one person says this is the way. Now, leadership could say this is a new system because we're going to do a new payroll system. We've shifted from Paylocity to someone else, right? This is a new system. And so the agreed upon system is now being put out there. And is it a documented process? Do we have the tools to make sure that everyone can follow it? And does it deliver us consistent results? This is that opportunity for some kind of theorizing, some thinking, hypothesis doing, and then testing before we get that final agreed upon documented process. And this is where things take time. But if we're making lots of mistakes, if we're doing things that are getting in the way of our success, then that can become a challenge. So one example I have to think about is, why do systems work? And if I had you all on speaker, I could say, do any of you have any questions about what these three signs mean? And all of you would say, no, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do here. I don't speak Spanish, but I can figure out there's a red sign that says alto. That doesn't mean, the singers below soprano, above the tenors. It's red. It's got 8 sides. It means stop. It's got an extra cross on there because it's a railroad crossing. It's got a stop with the word on it. These are from 3 separate countries, 3 separate continents. And yet, they all mean the same thing, and we can follow them because it's an agreed upon system. Right? There's a bunch of writing, there's books, there's textbooks of how we do things, but this is a system that everyone follows because there was buy-in, there was belief, and it got really good results. You get to a stop sign, if everyone follows it, there's a whole lot less accidents, people don't get hurt. This is what I get excited about in regards to these pieces. Now, I think one of the other key elements here is to think about this concept here is belief cycle and how beliefs are impacting these systems, right? As leaders in your organization, as managers, as individuals who are looking for consistent opportunity to improve, our beliefs and our actions are impacting others' beliefs and actions within the company. If we are a frontline staff person who has beliefs about all these systems being placed upon us, that also has a lot of impact on our success. So I want to think about this. If we have a situation where your belief is that cost of mistakes is negatively impacting your business, so you want to do things that in order to minimize mistakes so we have more resources that stay within the organization. So, what is your action? Is to create a system, right? Create systems, create tools, create visual things, create positive opportunities for people to do the right thing on a regular basis in order to have less mistakes and therefore more resources. So, what are your actions in this moment? Your actions at this moment might be let's let them know we're one going to create the systems and we sell the why. If we make less mistakes, there's more resources, money, time, materials that we can spend on the employee, the person who's using the system, the team that's using the system, the teams that's doing the work. Because this is that moment right here in between as you sell this concept. And I use the word sell intentionally because oftentimes we tell people. But we have a whole process, some of you may have heard about, called bottom line change. And we use this to help sell a new idea, a shift, a change in a process in order to become more effective. And it's in this moment, your action would be to use that process. I can recommend the class, it's great. There's some stuff in our free materials as well, free resources. So look at there or reach out. You'll get my email afterwards. You can reach out to me directly to get more information. But we want others to start to believe and say, hey, this thing, if we can get our staff to believe or our team to believe that if we follow this new system, we're going to get better results. Then they start taking actions, right? If they realize this, they start to follow the new systems and they can see that sometimes they're making less mistakes. There's less waste. There's less opportunity for problems to happen. There's less things they're throwing away. There's less time they have to remake things. And if the final result of this is that we have this opportunity to make the systems better, your belief becomes reinforced. What becomes really awesome to me as I was thinking about this particular presentation is your belief may be right on the bottom. And I had to think about this one hard with another trainer because it might be if we flip this upside down and put your belief at the bottom and the other's belief at the top, it works the same way. But your belief and your action is trying to sell to theirs. And then this space right here, this action, this filter, when you recognize a belief and make a conscious effort to shift your actions. But think about this, if an employee recognizes that their belief about new systems is causing the delay and pauses for a moment and thinks about the fact of, hey, is it possible? Is it probable that we have the opportunity to say, here's this system that is being given to me that it might lead to better results, which is more resources for me. And so they have to pause their potential beliefs that systems are bad and they're just putting it upon us to do harder work. We want to think about they have the opportunity here between their beliefs and their actions to say, well, let's give it a chance and try. And all of a sudden they see that it starts to work. There might be some positive change and their beliefs have shifted. To me, this belief and the staff buy-in that Catherine mentioned earlier in the chat, right? Getting that buy-in is one of those key elements, selling the concept as opposed to telling, and thinking that there are beliefs involved. If this was a long time thing that we've always done it this way, saying we've always done it that way is a belief that people before us knew better. And yet, there's a whole bunch of things that have changed. 15 years ago, this thing that I'm holding was not near as productive or functional. 10 years ago, this thing on my finger didn't give me data about how my life is. So saying we're doing it because that's the way we've always done it needs to have a why. The opposite side can be totally true. I was watching a show about a gentleman who had a 1800s pasta maker, right? The system is we use this because it creates this amazing pasta that's almost handmade, but it's a machine that's doing it through hydraulics. That's where the system has been around so long and the culture just doesn't pull away because we have the best product. So we get our buy-in, we have our beliefs about what we're doing. Our beliefs, our actions, we need to think about selling in this moment that allows others' beliefs about systems. I don't love them. They're hard. They're never going to work. To start to be shifted as we move back and we see the results because this is a circle, a cycle that continues to flow through. Now, as much as I would love to talk about all of this for even longer, because it's one of my favorite tools here, I also want to think about structurally what we look at. When we are talking about SOPs, a lot of times they look like this, right? Written, full page, lots of words, maybe a picture. This one is lucky because it has a picture, but there's a lot of words and it's oftentimes even longer. One of my favorite examples that I thought about putting in here, but it would have been multiple slides just to show the original, had about 15 pages just to be able to set the table at one of our event spaces. Every measurement, which fork, how it looked, all these different details, literally using a ruler in between each item to make sure it was exactly correct. But if you look at this one, this is our seminar take-home bags. After people come to a 2-day seminar, they get this take-home bag. And so this is given to our event staff, to anybody who's helping. This is the detailed learner level SOP. Now, learner level SOPs are great for when we're teaching, sharing, when we're coming up with something new and selling. Here's the new concept. But oftentimes the process stops there. So how do we use more effectively? How do we get better results? Well, we can translate that same exact one-page version into a simple card that is posted, stuck, placed near the situation that reminds of from the whole page, right? With 4 bullet points, 5 sub-bullet points to a singular 2x4 index card that has 2 checkpoints and a picture. This is the expert level SOP. This is the reminder that we use in order to make sure we're doing it the right way every single time. Because in we're using these systems, the idealized system is easier to use than to not use. The idealized system, I'm going to say it twice to make sure it sticks, is to make sure that we have a system that is easier to use than to not use. I have less mistakes. I have less possibility of forgetting something because I've used the system and it doesn't make it harder for me to do. If I'm reading this one over and over for every single bag for 15 people to make sure I do all the steps, that's going to make it take longer. If I have this in front of the bag and as I place stuff in, I'm going to process this and have it as a reminder to make sure I'm using the whole thing. This is where we have some real wins. Timing, efforting, and people are using it to get more consistent results. And I don't know the last time, and Mara, you could drop it in a chat the last time, or Katie, if you think of it, the last time we had a mistake in someone's special bag when they're leaving a seminar. I don't know that's ever happened. And you might say, well, there's only 4 items in there. It's pretty easy. Well, there's a sticker. That's a 5th. So it is a rather simple one, but simple things are the things we forget or assume we've done more often than not. So doing it the same way every time and getting those consistent results gets us better results. And it's a system that's doing it. As we think about this, here's another food-based system, right? When you look at this, you see someone with a wonderfully safe, healthy glove. You see someone with a very sharp knife and a piece of bread and a weird piece of plastic attached to that board. And then you'll see 2 metal posts. Well, if you have a big slice of bread, a big loaf of bread with tough crusts, and you're trying to make toast with it on a regular basis in a coffee company, and you have a bunch of staff turnover and you want to make sure it's a consistent product for those customers who come in regularly to buy toast with toppings on it, And we want to make sure the toppings don't slide off or fall off. And we want to make sure the toast isn't too thick to get into people's mouths, but not so thin they think they're not getting a nice amount. We want to have a consistent bread slice, right? And so thinking about this and how this works, they put this jig, this template together where you put the slice of bread, you put the loaf of bread against that, and then you put the knife against the two metal posts, and you're able to consistent diagonal slice, keeping your hand safe, keeping the consistent size and shape, and work for toast. And it keeps it incredibly flat so the toppings don't come off, right? This is something that might seem to be very difficult to write out an SOP for, right? Imagine the delicate detail of do approximately 1 inch at a diagonal cut across the, right? There's a lot of details that you'd be making assumptions on. This is not an idea where we want to have the art of slicing bread. We want to have a consistent slice. Here's the other problem. If we slice them all ahead of time, which you might think that's a better system, then the pieces of toast are just ready and we put them in the toaster and they operate, right? That seems much better. But if any of you have been around fresh made bread, if you let it out and you cut it early and you don't use it all in one day, you either have waste or you have old, stale, sliced bread. So we need a system, a tool that allows us to get consistent results without product waste and gives the customer what they're looking for. So this is used by every staff person. And a new staff person can figure out how to slice toast in a consistent manner rather quickly because this is put in place for them. Once you see it once, maybe twice, you're able to put the bread against it, put the knife against the metal blades, and get the same cut as someone who's been there for 10 years. This, to me, takes this complex component. And some people say, well, that's not complex. It's slicing bread. I do that every day. Yes, but to do it the right size in the distance, imagine if they had a ruler, if they had another piece, if they were trying to do all these different things in a fully written SOP, what that would look like. This is what we start to do because time-wise, training on this SOP is almost minuscule, right? There's a little bit, but once they see it, they can repeat it over and over without a whole lot of extra effort. Now, this is my absolute favorite SOP that I mentioned and referenced early on. This is the one that I look at and say, this is absolutely amazing, right? And some people say, oh, that's not what I want to look at. But the thing is, I am able to look at this and go, this is a reminder of the opportunities for danger. Knives are dangerous pieces, and whether it's a finger getting cut, right, or other pieces, we want to make sure that knives are treated with care. So we have a somewhat crazy possibility on the bottom where things are bad and there's no announcement, there's hand waving, there's people getting injured, but on the top it shows a perfectly aligned hand pointed down, knife pointed down, announcing loudly in the space that there's a knife and the person next to them holding still, absolutely still, so that there is no opportunity for any danger. And this can go directly and translate. It's not just Zingerman's. There's been many companies that have taken this exact SOP, this exact tool, and said, okay, put this up in our kitchen and have people start to use it. And we've sent that to them. They printed it out, put it up in their space, and had more safety, more opportunity, more consistent safety with knives. It doesn't mean we never have a knife cut. No, because people are using knives and sometimes they will cut themselves. It happens. But it allows us to have a tool that we are consistently using to get our better results. These are visual SOPs, right? We've had a jig SOP that allows a functional, and we have both the learner and the expert level SOP that we talked about. The international ones have become so embedded, I don't think any of us really think about those stop signs as being international SOPs, but they are. They're a visual reminder of how we use roadways. Even if you're in Japan and it's on the other side of the road, it still works because it still is a sign that is red that everyone knows. If there's a red sign that has usually 8 sides, you're going to have a stop that needs to happen. To me, this is the opportunity for how do we start as a grain, how do we start building something like a stop sign within our company? that is so simple to remember that it's a reminder every single time, but we don't throw them away once people stop there all the time. We keep them there to remind people that that is the expected outcome at that situation. So for me, we get better results. We get consistent results by thinking about what is the SOP that works? What is the system that we're using? What is the tool we have created that staff will use over and over again? And selling them on the concept because there's a lot of beliefs about systems and new systems that people don't like them, that people don't want new ones. They just want to keep doing what they're doing. And sometimes those are good, but sometimes when improved, you have much better results. So, with that, I would love to pause and I know there are some questions. I'm not looking at Q&A yet, but Katie and Mara are going to help distill questions and ideas that you have for me to answer and connect with. So, thank you.
Hello again. Thank you, Timo. Um, I I loved all of the answers to our initial question. And so I'm going to start by asking you about some of those.
Okay.
Um, so Kia Burton, they wrote two things, and something that gets in the way for them is the system feeling too restrictive,
Mhm.
and also following a system and providing great service seem to be at odds with each other. Can you speak to those?
Yeah, so I think I'll start with the second one. So following the system and giving great service. So to me, I'll go back to my one of my first jobs. I was working in an ice cream shop, a soft serve ice cream shop. And in that soft serve ice cream shop, right, great service is to give people exactly the ice cream they're asking for, right? And a perfected system would have been a measured, scaled effort of this, and this that would have said, okay, exactly, and I could set it on a scale, right? And be able to say, okay, this amount, this piece. Because they get exactly what they want. They're never shorted, right? And the business wins because they're never over and we're not making them too big. I wasn't trained on that my first day. And my first day, there was I don't know, 700, 800 person concert. So can you imagine the customer service that they got? When I was randomly I was lucky that they got the right flavor because we had chocolate, vanilla, and twist. Was lucky if I gave the server, because I was the only person making ice cream because you had one machine and 200 people in line, and I was making as many as I could as quickly as I could. And I don't think they were the right size because it wasn't consistent. I was giving them the right flavor, but they were taking whatever they were kind of handed. To me, that isn't great service because they were expecting a large or a small. And so getting to what that is, right? A simple system might be on the back of that ice cream machine to make it fast and consistent and allowing for results would be to have on that machine three engraved lines, small, medium, large, small, medium, large, right? So as you pull the ice cream, you know this is a small, this is a medium, this is a large. The ice cream is going to flow the same speed, so I'm able to make the ice cream cone consistently to the right size using a visual cue. That doesn't mean a lot of extra training, a lot of extra details, but I'm giving the customer what they want, which is the best level of service I can imagine. So as opposed to making it so I have to think, what is a small, what is a medium, what is a large, the system allows me to do that effectively. Every single bar or many bars that I know of, they have a wine glass with a line on it or a line on the bar that they put the wine glass next to. And as they pour the wine in, they pour until that fill line, and that's a 6 ounce pour, right? They have a visual cue, a visual system that allows them to not overserve and not underserve anybody there. It doesn't take any more time to pour accurately than it does to just pour the glass of wine. I hope that's help. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Um, all right, we have a couple other questions that have come in since your presentation.
Hmm.
So, someone is wondering, we have a very small team of only three people
Okay.
um, that agree on procedures and then don't use them.
Ah.
So, how can you encourage people to be honest about what system works for them or not? we keep discussing, agreeing, and then not doing.
So my first step is it documented, right? And I don't know among the three of you, because you can talk about it and agree on it in a meeting, but have you documented or written it out? I think the documentation is a key component because it kind of solidifies that thing that is a real thing. It's not just us talking in a meeting. In another meeting, we'll adjust it, right? It'd say, I've agreed to this. And it could be, if it's three of you, it might even be a signature of some sort to buy in, like this is what we're going to try. And I would say, let's assess this system for 2 weeks, for 1 month, to give a trial period where there'll be a feedback session. So agreeing to say, we're going to try as is, no adjustment for 2 weeks. And then at the 2 week meeting, we're going to do a review on this and see how it's going. Even people who are resistant are oftentimes willing to do it because they believe in that 2 weeks, they're going to prove to you how bad this new system is. And in doing that, you allow that to happen. If it's a bad system, great, right? We will learn from it and change it. But sometimes they realize this system isn't quite so bad. And so we're able to get better results, more consistent results, and it might even be a little bit easier by the time I practiced it. I think one of the key components, and we talked about it earlier, people's resistance to change, some turnover, and also people saying, I don't want to do a new way, is it's a new thing we have to learn. And some of us in our jobs don't want to learn. We just want to repeat what we're doing. And so getting people comfortable with relearning and consistently learning new things within your team, I like to say that if we're not learning, we're actually falling behind. So if we're always doing just the same thing over and over, I believe we're falling behind. So this is that opportunity. We're learning this new thing. All of us are going to be uncomfortable. Let's try it for 2 weeks and then we'll talk about it and we'll start over or we'll move on if it's working well.
Yeah, the word experiment I found is a really helpful way to like have that conversation or get people aligned on, okay, this is it's we're trying this out. We have the power to change it collectively. Um, and we've agreed that we're going to talk about possible changes after a certain amount of time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Here's another question. This is from Jessica. I find it really challenging to get belief and buy-in from young staff, ages 15 to 24-ish. Developmentally, they're in a stage where being contrary is normal. Do you
Hmm.
have any ideas?
I do. I mean, this one, it's a different topic of mine, but I love the answer to this because research to me has shared. I've started to do some on this because the younger generation doesn't want to do dot dot dot, right? If we just kind of put that in. But I will share with you that I was a younger generation at one point. Katie was a younger generation at one point, right? We all were someone else's younger generation. The younger generation was never seen as functional. They never seen as excited or as motivated or as dot dot dot, fill in the blank. What research has started to share is that giving consistent, clear expectations is one of the best ways to do this no matter what the generational component is. So, what is the clear expectation? Yes, you can be contrary, but I want to now sell those expectations. In order to be here, these are what we do, and here's why. Here's how it gets us to better results. If we do this and this and this, it builds in and gets to this outcome that benefits us all. One of the drivers is, like I said in that belief cycle, if we have better results and less waste, we have a much better chance of being able to pay you more. It's not a guarantee, but it's a much better chance. There's a why there. So, what does that look like? How does it function? I have this idea. I think it gets us better results. I would use the same language as Katie talked about in the last one. Let's try an experiment for 2 weeks. They're not buying in. And you can tell them, I am totally open to your feedback, positive or negative, by the time we're finished. What do you think is going to work on this? We want to try this out and see if we get some better results. And if we do, let's say we save 50 bucks on whatever it is, on product or whatever it might be. Maybe we buy some pizza for that group or for that team or for something that is of appreciation. What if we give them a free item from whatever we sell or whatever we do? I don't know what that possibility is. You could do a cup of coffee. You could do what those might be. But a reward for using the system and actually making a savings, having a positive income impact based on this new version. And if they start to see these new versions are actually making their work easier, they will be more likely to try the second one than the first. The first is going to be the hardest, but getting clear on what is the expectation, how it's going to benefit them is what is also a great way because we're selling that concept as opposed to just telling them this is going to be the new way.
Thank you. It's a good answer. I hope it is also helpful for
So
Jessica.
do I.
Okay. Another question. Do you have suggestions for complex systems with many steps?
Yeah. This is, and we go into a lot of detail in this in our SOP workshop, our virtual workshop. Sometimes we try to make an SOP or a system for a really complex whole process. One of the key elements of a really successful system, right, is saying, here's what we can do. Let's break it down into six components. So we do six SOPs like the knife safety one that are like, when you're here, you do this. When you're here, you do this. When you're here, you do this, right? Mopping is a great example. If you have to mop a whole area, right, there's a complex, and people are like, that's not complex. Well, there's some complexity, right? Where's the mop bucket? It's in that space. How much cleaning fluid do I put in? How much water do I put in? Do I have to put anything else? Where is the mop? How do I hang up the mop? Right? All those little details. That would be one. Second is, how do I mop? Is there a pattern for getting the floor clean and effective? How much should I clean, do you think, before I refill it? What are the steps of making sure I mop correctly? Because just kind of throwing the mop and plopping it down on the floor is not going to get clean results. So is it an S-shaped pattern? So you're getting and covering halfway on each one, so you get the whole floor twice. That's, well, not complex. There's some details there that if you don't know are unusual. And then when and how do I clean the bucket? So at that point, I need to empty it. Do I just put new material and new cleanser and water in, or do you want me to rinse out all the residue first? So to me, that is three. Oops, sorry about that, Mike. Um, that's three separate SOPs or systems that you've now created. Now, you could write them as one whole one and have three separate diagrams, three images. For training, you could have, an actual video of mopping effectively and mopping not effectively. You could do a quick test of like what's clean and what's not using a germ thing. There's lots of ways of showing the impact. But to me, thinking about what is the span, start and finish of each of the sections and getting clear of I can do this, I can do this, and I can do this in one learning. If it's a very long, complex system, you have one maybe document that links to a bunch of smaller pieces.
I like that. I like that you uh, answered the question and also helped people realize that there are probably their systems are more complex than they think.
There's a lot of very
So it's a
complex
good
systems
question
that
for
happen.
everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, I will echo Mara. If you do have any other questions, please drop them in the Q&A for us. I believe that the last one that I know about, I'm going to ask you. Oh, there's two now. Okay, great. We have time, so please do put them in. So potentially the second to last question. Do you have any advice about creating or updating systems and getting buy-in from the rest of your team from a middle management position? So I believe that means this person is in a middle management position.
Got it. So yes, one of our favorite ways to help get buy-in in almost any system we use is to have them help with the creation. Pilot it with one of those individuals. Who is the person who might be more reluctant, who might be more resistant? And I'm going to use Katie as the example now of like, okay, we're doing this part and this part. And Katie's like, I don't like to do it that way. I want to do it my own. Well, here, I have this idea. Would you help me write what you think is going to be most effective? Can you do the task for me, how you're doing it, so I can write that down? And then could you see what this does and see if this might work? Could it be possible? And so engaging some of those people who might be more resistant in the process and getting their feedback, being like, hey, okay, here's what we get, right? When we do it this way, we get this result. We do it this way, we do it this way. And it might even be me doing it side by side with them to understand their process. And then me doing it in front of them, showing how close the new process is, but with them and saying, what do you think of this? What challenges do you see in doing it this way? and allowing them to be part of the creation process as opposed to just receiving the end product. And I think that's one of the best ways to, again, sell and engage in that change, in that shift and update, as opposed to kind of, we've got it all figured out. This is the way it's going to be. Here's how it lands. If your structure is that you're expected as middle management to create and share with somebody else and make them and have them do it as made, I think at that point, it's thinking about what the sales of that thing is, not telling them. So it's that sell versus tell. Here's what the outcomes are going to be. Here's what the benefits are going to be. Let's try this out for a month to see if we can get some of those results and see if we can get some of those wins. That would be my thought as how you kind of balance those pieces in two different spaces.
Thank you. Um, okay, yeah. Yes, thank you. I had to reread the question to make sure that I had actually asked it correctly. And if I haven't, and this person would like to chime in, please do in the chat. Okay, I believe this is our last question.
Okay.
Doreen is curious. Do you have suggestions for a sole proprietor slash single employee who would like
Mhm.
to implement better systems for their business? Not sure how to get started.
Sure, absolutely. It's one of the first things I learned is take the thing that annoys you the most, focus on that. And I say that lightly, but it's what is that thing that causes you pain, right? Is it getting back to people in an immediate way for on emails? Okay, well, that's a system, right? I know Katie and Mara, I have less of them, both have template emails that are consistent things that they can rely on and plug in and pull and then be able to adjust and personalize, but they have the frame and the structure of an email to reply to most common questions. That is a system. If I put a template together that I can use on a consistent basis, it allows it. But to me, I would brainstorm what are the things that frustrate me? Or spend a week. Every time something frustrates me, write it down. Document what are those things that cause an annoyance, that cause me to not be thrilled with whatever's coming. And if I write those down, then at the end of that week, going, okay, which one do I want to make a system for? That one, great, because that one really annoyed me on Tuesday. Awesome, let's start there. And so prioritizing based on what is the pain point, what is the thing that's bothering you, and then saying, okay, is that one system? Is it a couple? And starting by creating those ones. Because if you get relief from that pain, right, that is the really amazing component, right? If you get relief from that one, it's going to spur you and excite you and give you energy momentum towards the next ones on the list.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad Doreen's thrilled. Uh, um, okay, this is really the last question, and it kind of ties into this question.
Sure.
So, um, what should be done if the systems seem to be a bit bureaucratic and take away agency, but still ensures consistency and standards? So, like the pain point is that it's bureaucratic and takes away agency,
Mhm.
but it does give you it does give you a consistent result.
So I think it's figuring out what the agency is you're looking for, right? To me, if I'm, and this is for Zingerman's to use an example, but it's the first one that pops in my head, right? If I want to make tacos and I'm working at Taco Bell and I want to put a lot of guacamole because I like it, and Katie's giggling because I shared this with her. I don't think she knew. Like they use a caulk gun to put your guacamole on. Why? Because it's consistent. They're able to put the same exact amount on every single time. But I'm like, well, I like a lot of it. Well, that's cool, but now we'd have to do it twice, and that's double, and that's waste of product, etc. So I think sometimes there are structures that put in place in order to get consistency that feel confining, that feel like it's less personal, that feel like it's less like things that I have agency for. What I would say is look for what areas do you have agency, but we need to have those consistent outcomes. Like I could have lots. The example I always give is people want agency until I talk to them about the system of payroll. Because no one I've ever met wants the person who's in charge of payroll to have agency of when they pay us. That may be the most boring job in the entire world because they pay every 2 weeks. They process, they pay, hit a button, put a number in, and we get a check every 2 weeks. It is the most consistent, bureaucratic, required. It's got taxes, it's got this detail. Like it is the most consistently repetitive, bureaucratic process that I can imagine. Yet anybody here Katie, would you be okay if I said, okay, sometime in the next 3 months, if I ran our payroll, would you be okay? Sometime in the next 3 months, you'll get a check. It'd be totally cool. It'd be a full amount, but I just don't know when I'm going to do it. When I want some agency and some ability to like have my personality and choose who I want to get paid next.
No,
Would
I
you be
wouldn't
okay
like
with that?
that.
No. Right. And so I think there's some realization there that there's some things that are space for that. And I think the other example I tend to use is right when we're setting up the table setting, that is a absolutely needs to be consistent every single place. When we're putting the flowers together though, that's an art. That's a space for agency. So within your work, where is that space you have agency and where is that space you need to follow the rules to get the consistent outcome? I don't want someone building a my airplane that I'm going to fly in to be like, oh, I'm going to do this bolt to this degree of pressure and I'm going to do this bolt to this degree of pressure and just randomly choose what those are. We have expectations so we get those outcomes. And so sometimes while it feels really bureaucratic, what is the outcome? And sometimes it's just remembering I'm doing all this stuff to get the outcome for that person, right? I hope Katie Ann Andrews, who worked for us and she does our payroll, thinks about how happy we are when we get our pay correctly every 2 weeks, right? I hope she sees that as a positive and say, okay, this is a thing I need to do over and over and over again, but I know they're excited when they can pay their bills and do stuff and have money in their bank account. So sometimes it's shifting your mindset and saying, well, I have to because it needs to be done this way to get the results. What is the positive I'm putting in place?
Yeah. Choosing where to advocate for the agency.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining us. I realize we're 2 minutes late. Well, 2 minutes past time. Um, and I thank you also for asking such great questions. We really love systems here. There's something that, can feel boring and bureaucratic, but they really are so important and can be really a creative, life-giving force when you have conversations about them that are inclusive and curious. So, Timo, thank you so much for sharing your love of systems, and Mara for wrangling all the questions with me. Um, we always love to hear what you thought of today's conversation. If you don't have a lot of time, there is a quick poll in Zoom. Here it is. You can give feedback. 0 is that this was the worst thing you've ever attended. 10 is that you would highly recommend it to any and everyone. And then if you would like to give us feedback, like verbal feedback or suggestions about future topics, Mara's going to drop a link in the chat and you can do that. There's a very quick form. So as I said at the beginning, we will send out the recording of this and Timo's slides tomorrow. So look out for those. And we hope to see you back here again in the future. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.